There's the most beautiful buck in my yard, and he's definitely eating our pumpkin plants that just started growing naturally. Let me try to show you. How are we doing? I wanted to dedicate this video to talking about emotions, specifically anger, because we're going through a lot collectively right now in this country, and there's a level of volatility that is just kind of palpable, and understandably so. When I started therapy in 2021, a large part of my work was reconnecting with feeling, reconnecting with emotions, and specifically connecting with anger. As someone who grew up in a high control version of conservative Christianity, I know I'm not alone when I say that anger is something that is really demonized, literally, in these environments. And anger is seen as something that is sinful, something that is bad, something to run away from, something that indicates a problem. So during the time when I started therapy, my therapist would do this thing where he would ask me how I felt about something, and I would always tell him what I thought about something. He would pinpoint this, and I truly didn't understand what he was talking about. So we talked through how I had a habit of intellectualizing my emotions. Intellectualizing your emotions is kind of where you use analysis or logic or reasoning to try to wrap your mind around maybe an uncomfortable or difficult situation, which actually can create an emotional barrier to feeling pain, to feeling the emotion. Having feelings in general was really demonized in the environments that I grew up in within the religion that I was raised in. There's this whole culture of dying to yourself, of laying down your life, of becoming a servant, you know, basically kind of outsourcing your life experience to this external force of being a good servant of Christ or whatever it might be. And I think that when you're hearing this message growing up from the earliest ages, it becomes really easy to sort of detach from yourself and who you really are, because you're not being taught, at least we weren't being taught where I grew up, about emotional regulation. Emotional regulation what? Like, this wasn't a thing that we talked about. So oftentimes it would go a little something like, how do you feel about XYZ thing? And I would say, I think that this thing is really unfair because XYZ thing, right? An intellectual response to a circumstance that I was going through. And he'd be like, well, but where do you feel that? Nowhere? I don't feel it anywhere. What do you mean? Like, where in your body do you feel that? No clue what you're talking about. No, what do you mean experiencing emotions like in certain places in your body? This was foreign to me. I was very, very disconnected from myself. And this was not just because of religion. This was also because of infant loss. I went through 2 very like physical traumas. Yeah, just so many factors, so many different factors, including my family of origin and our kind of patterns, the religion that I was raised in, my infant loss traumas. They all kind of amounted to this existence that I was living that was very much fragmented and detached. It's overwhelming at times to feel the depth and the width of what it's like to just be a human on this earth who is in touch with my feelings. It's something that has been a very big learning curve, though it is hard at times to feel the depth and the width of the emotions that come with being in this particular body of mine on this planet of ours. It is far superior and I am so much healthier than when I was living detached and disconnected and honestly like apathetic. Sometimes when people are detached or disconnected or kind of living in a place of apathy, they can tend to think that things just don't bother them, that they're just an easygoing person and that not much ruffles their feathers. And while there is a spectrum of how each person is going to experience like their full capacity of emotions, it's not true that some of us are born just not experiencing the emotion of anger. Like, that's just not a thing. So what was actually happening for me is that I was experiencing things that were making me angry, but because I had this, you know, conditioning from whatever factors, whether it be family, whether it be religion, whether it be community and culture, I kind of had this response to ignore it, immediately ignore. We're not going to identify with that emotion. But my emotional body is still experiencing that, and it's still going somewhere. So through therapy, through doing inner work, I had to first come to the realization that there are no bad emotions. There are emotions. There are what the emotions tell us, and then there is what we choose to do with said emotion. It's no secret, and it's not shocking to say that people harm other people or themselves out of anger. But it can also be said that people are productive with their anger and use that energy of anger to do good for the world. Both can be true. I love that our kids and us, we have this movie now, Inside Out and Inside Out 2, that does a really great job of displaying all the various emotions and their roles and why they exist. And I think that this is incredible. I wish we had had movies like that when we were younger. But anger is often the most appropriate response to some of the things that are happening in our world and in our life. Like if we were to take a simple example, let's say you're a parent and your kid's playing out front, and you look out your window just in time to see another neighbor kid storm into your yard and punch your kid in the face, right? To be apathetic about that, or to be numb, or to be neutral, or to be happy about that happening would be problematic. The natural response as a parent who loves your kid, seeing them get punched in the face, is that you're gonna be angry, right? So do you go outside with that anger and you punch that kid in the face back? No, wouldn't recommend. But in this scenario, it is not the anger that is the problem. It is the way that that anger manifests. There's no human being that can escape that energy of anger, whether they're aware of it or not. Someone being apathetic or detached or disconnected from their emotions does not mean that the emotions aren't somewhere in their body living. We collect these, feelings that happen to us, and maybe we're not feeling, or maybe we're disconnected from them, maybe we're numb, but those emotions are very much still with us. They are living inside of our body. And so what would happen to me is, over the course of time, I would feel angry about things, but I would never deal with it. I would suppress it or ignore it and move on. And all of that was living inside of my body. So what would happen is when I would reach this kind of threshold, almost like a pressure cooker, anytime I felt angry, it was kind of being like deposited into this pressure cooker of anger. And I wasn't dealing with those emotions because I was taught that they were bad and evil. And I also felt guilty for feeling angry. And so every time that was happening, I was disconnected and detached, but I was very much still taking on that energy, and it was living inside of me. And then something would happen, and I would kind of just it's like the lid popping off of a pressure cooker, and I would get really angry and have just like these spouts of anger. And they were damaging, both to me and just people that I love, especially my husband. This is a dynamic that we both struggled with. And so we would have really bad fights. And it turns out that it was just so much like unresolved feeling and unprocessed emotion that at some point in time would just the lid would come off. So in the early days, when I finally was connected to my emotions, I still would find myself doing this thing, especially with anger or frustration, which was to kind of muscle my way through it. Okay, I'm feeling the anger now, so this is good, right? I'm connected to my feelings now. I'm feeling the anger, but I'm still muscling my way to, okay, we're not going to react. We're not going to react. That's not what we're going to do. We're going to redirect. We are going to refocus. We are going to whatever. We're going to make a different choice, right? And even that, though, is not quite honoring or sitting with the emotion of anger. Experiencing emotions is a skill that you can relearn. It's a skill that you can acquire, but it sometimes takes a lot of time. But it really wasn't until I began to fully experience the width and the depth of the emotions as they come that I learned how simple, not easy, but how simple it is to move through them in order to kind of accept the full experience that I'm having in any given situation as a human being with feelings. In the example that I gave you about a kid punching your kid in the face, anger is an appropriate response. Anger at that child for doing that, anger at that situation for happening, anger at that kid's parents for whatever, those are all appropriate responses to what happened. collectively, we are experiencing a lot of anger, okay? And we're seeing all the time, some people are handling it better than others. Some days are better than others for me. I have absolutely responded to people out of anger at the things that I'm seeing. And it's not that the anger is the problem, it's what we do with it. Because anger is often demonized and correlated with being evil or bad in certain cultures and communities or families, it's very easy to feel the emotion of anger and to immediately kind of slip into a place of guilt or shame about it. When we're feeling guilt, we can get curious about where this is coming from. So like, let's say there's a situation where I have a grumpy day, my kids get home from school, I'm just in a bad mood, I don't do a good job. Let's say that I'm a little snippy, I hurt their feelings with my tone or something that I've said. When I feel guilt about that, that's a really good thing. It's a really good thing, but I don't need to stay there. I can get curious about it. So when I'm feeling guilty, I'm asking myself now, what is this feeling trying to tell me? Is there something that I need to do? So in this case, I would be like, yes, there is something I need to do. And that thing is that I need to go apologize to my kids because I didn't treat them the way that they deserve to be treated in this situation, right? And so that moves me into action. Then we can step into forgiveness and then we can kind of release that and move on. If you've been taught to demonize anger or feel like evil for feeling anger or feeling defective for feeling anger, we can often go into that guilt, into that shame, into that place where we're kind of just like in this low level, like self-deprecating, beating ourselves up, kind of stuck in this place of feeling maybe defective or like a bad person or whatever it might be. So this all leads me to this chart, right? This is a vibration chart. It's not woo-woo. Everything vibrates. This couch is vibrating. I'm vibrating. And they've been able to study scientifically that emotions carry frequency. They carry an energy with them. I want you to pay attention to where this talks about pre-sickness and health. Because while we're not demonizing emotions, while we're not calling any emotions wrong or bad, we are recognizing that choosing to live and embody only these emotions towards the bottom can have and often does have a very real physical consequence for our bodies. There are a lot of people who do not yet realize the correlation between emotions and health. And a lot of unprocessed emotions that are remaining in the body do have the capacity to have a negative outcome on physical health that can manifest in different illnesses, different, body aches and struggles that we have can be tied back to emotions that we might be embodying and not moving through. On the flip side of this, there are people who will see these emotions at the top, and this is what can lead to a lot of spiritual bypassing or bypassing of feelings. Is when people are like, okay, this area at the top, this is where I want to be, this is where I want to reside, this is where I want to live, and so anything that's not these things at the top, I'm not going to feel them. And this brings us full circle back to the original point, which is that's still suppression, that's still detachment, that's still perpetuating a disconnect from the true self. So being awakened or enlightened or a person that embodies love and peace doesn't mean that you never go into these other areas. If you take a person like Jesus, if he was real and if what is said about him is real, we know that he at times embodied anger. And what did he do with it? He tried to create social change from his place of righteous anger. He was mad at the Pharisees, he's mad at religious leaders. He tried to push back with his anger against oppressive and dogmatic structures. In my experience, I believe that living a life that is actually authentic to the human being that you are is understanding that you are going to experience the range of these emotions, maybe even in an hour or a day or a week. Like, you're going to be moving through this chart. So while it would be a disservice to you to remain in a space of chronic fear and guilt and shame, anger, it would also be a disservice to you to pretend that you're always experiencing, love and peace and whatever's at the top of this chart, because that's more than likely, unless you're an alien, like inauthentic to the true experience of being human. So one thing I like to do with this chart is I like to reference it when I'm feeling a certain emotion. So today we're talking about anger. Here it's listed as wrath. So when I'm feeling angry, I don't want to spiral down into fear and apathy and guilt and shame. I want to use that energy to move me to a better place. And so oftentimes what I'm doing first is I'm naming what I'm angry about. I'm angry that I have no idea where so many missing immigrants are who were detained and handled by ICE. It terrifies me to think about. I think that we don't have information on 2/3 of the immigrants that are supposed to be in a system that is trackable, where we can see where they have gone to. So there's a lack of transparency there, a lot of potential to feel a lot of fear there. I feel angry at the communities that I come from who have really leaned into Christian nationalism. So this is like getting curious about emotions versus letting the emotions take you over. I'm angry at this administration right now for obvious reasons. I'm angry that there's a battle, a war for our free speech right now in this country. I'm angry at Christian nationalism, and I'm very angry that I come from communities that have leaned so hard into Christian nationalism. I'm angry at people who are spreading around the message that Charlie Kirk was an amazing person who did good for this world, while not saying anything about what's happening in Gaza or any of the other horrific atrocities happening in our country. Just the selective sort of empathy and virtue signaling happening amongst the American church. And I could go on, you know, so many things to be angry about right now in our country, but what am I going to do with that? After I have named those feelings and why I feel that way, I will often try to feel where I feel that in my body. And this is something that was foreign to me, like I said, for a long time, so it can take practice. Like if I'm like, okay, now I named my anger, now where can I tune into my body and feel where I'm feeling that? And a lot of times I feel anger in my gut, like so in this like area down here. I'm feeling this anger. What am I going to do with this anger? Okay, well, if I don't process it, I'm probably going to be an asshole to the people that I love around me. I'm probably going to be an asshole posting online. I'm probably going to be an asshole responding to someone that I don't agree with, all of which have happened and probably will happen again because I'm not a perfect person. But finding an outlet for this anger is really where the magic happens. So this could look like taking a pillow, I have done this before, and going to your bed and just like going to town on your mattress, right? You can just like slam that out. You can get, we have like boxing pads that, you know, Chris will put on, and I can like punch his hands and kind of get that out. Or, you know, using your anger to fuel muscle gain. Incredible, right? Like I can feel anger and be like, I'm gonna hit the gym for a little bit and take that anger and use it to help me to lift heavier and to gain more muscle. Like if I have to feel this uncomfortable and annoying feeling of anger about what's happening and the injustices happening in our world, I'm at least gonna use it to, you know, grow this booty, right? Like we can take our anger and we can do productive things with it. It might not be physical for you. I'm listing very physical things because this is how I tend to process through my own emotions. Someone could be feeling angry and they could choose to rally up, you know, people in a community to do something about it. They might choose to share their voice online in a way that is productive and feels like I'm gonna take this anger, I'm gonna build something good from it. I'm gonna share a perspective that I think needs sharing, or create a project that's gonna make a difference in some way. There's not a wrong way, right? When you remove harm from the equation, like I'm not gonna do something that's going to harm me. I'm not gonna get angry and drive, you know, 150 miles down the interstate. That's a danger to myself and other people. There was a study that came out that was talking about how when we feel intense emotions, oftentimes to actually sit with them and feel them only takes about 30 to 90 seconds. And so keep this in mind too, like if you have kids, because if you are a parent who is teaching your child co-regulation, maybe for the first time, maybe it's something that you did not receive growing up, like a lot of us millennials, when we had these kind of like harder emotions, outbursts, you know, anger, a lot of us were sent to our rooms, right? To go deal with this alone and come out when you're better, right? That was just the way that it was. There wasn't as much information as we have now. It's a big bummer. Our parents' generation as a whole did not know how to do that because that was not modeled for them. And so a lot of times we are becoming the people who model that for our kids. And at first it can be really uncomfortable. If I'm sitting with my child through anger or sadness, sometimes there's this discomfort of like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to feel this. But oftentimes when we regulate, you know, with our kids, put a timer on. It can feel really uncomfortable, but maybe the tantrum lasts for 90 seconds and that's all it really needed. Like maybe they actually just needed to feel sad or frustrated or angry for a minute and a half in order to be able to come to a place of acceptance and be able to move on. So this is something that a lot of us are teaching ourselves at the same time as we are modeling it for our kids. And it can be a little messy, it can be a little tricky, but the overarching goal is always going to be to feel it, to name it, and to be able to process it fully and move on. And by doing that, we're not stuffing more emotions into our body. We're not loading our system down with unfelt, unprocessed emotions, which is incredible. So there are 4 books that I want to share with you about doing this kind of work. If this is something that's new to you, if you're someone who maybe is detached from their emotions or disconnected or learning how to feel for the first time in your adult life, let me read these to you. I'll put them on the screen as well. So The Language of Emotions, I really love this one. It's called The Language of Emotions, What Your Feelings Are Trying to Tell You. There's Running on Empty, Overcome Your Childhood Neglect, Childhood Emotional Neglect. I think it is actually. And then there's one of my favorites, The Body Keeps a Score. All of these are incredible. Ooh, there's one more. How to Do the Work is an amazing book too. If you're looking for something like maybe you can't afford therapy right now, don't want to be in therapy right now, don't have the time, that is kind of a more of a guidebook that I think is great because you can actually take it and do the practices within it to kind of self-guide. Obviously therapy is like the gold standard. Highly recommend it. It's so incredible. But if you're learning to feel your feelings and if you're learning to navigate your feelings through the turmoil of this world right now, I'm with you. I fully understand, and I hope that this video helps in some way.